Hi, this is Wesley, and I would like to welcome you to the Underground Geek Shack, Season 2, Episode 3. Hey, do you want to know something? There is always only one truth. So, today I am going to be talking about the first volume of Detective Conan. So, preface this first. So, Detective Conan is a long-running series. It's still ongoing. So, I've started watching the Detective Conan collection on Netflix. So that's what got me into reading Detective Conan. So the Conan arc, because this goes in arcs apparently. So according to the Detective Conan wiki, the Conan arc is from chapter 1 to chapter 175, and that's from volume 1 to volume 18. So I'm going to take this in volumes, so it's going to take me a lot longer to get through the Conan arc and then all the other arcs after that. So if you would like me to keep doing that, just let me know in the comment section down below, and I will continue and just explain my fascination with getting into Detective Conan. But for now, let's continue on. So, so the first volume of Detective Conan covers 3 cases. So we have the modern day Sherlock Holmes, we have the kidnapping case, and then we have an actress murder case. So we meet our protagonist, Shinichi. So here's the thing, right? Sorry I keep stopping a lot, but and let me know also in the comments how you want me to call out each character, because in the manga his name is Jimmy Kudo. In the anime, whether you're watching it on Crunchyroll or you're watching the collection on Netflix, his name is Shinichi. So I'm gonna call him Shinichi. When it comes to his friend Ron, I'm gonna call her Ron instead of Rachel, because in the manga her name is Rachel. When it comes to majority of the other characters, I will call them by probably their Japanese name. Like we're gonna get introduced to 3 kids in the manga. The anime, their names are Genta, Mitsuhiku, and Ayumi. Whereas in the manga, their names are George, Amy, and Tim. So, yeah, I'm gonna just tell y'all that now. So, into the modern day Sherlock Holmes, we get to meet Shinichi Kudo, and it's interesting because he's already on a case the moment we get to meet him, and he ends up he's at this party, and this dude is in a wheelchair. His leg is like bandaged up and everything, and he ends up telling, because the Inspector Megure is already there too, because he's the one who called Shinichi to the place, and so he's like, "Yo, Kudo, I need you to figure out what happened here." And so Shinichi figures out what happened, in the fact that the dude who owns the place ended up dying. And then he's like, well, everyone's like, oh no, how did this happen? And then Shinichi's like, yo, the person that killed his own friend is the old man that's in the wheelchair. And then everyone's like, what? No! And the old man's like, my boy, that can't be. My leg is broken. I'm in a wheelchair. I can't possibly kill my own friend. And then Shinichi takes a globe, throws it at the old man, and the old man ducks and dodges. And so, mind you, when he dodges, he's literally using his broken foot, like he said it was broken, and he dodges, and he's he's standing as if to duck something, and then one lady points it out, and she's like, oh oh my gosh, your leg, it healed. And then Shinichi's like, yeah, your leg healed like months ago. Like, what, you thought that, oh, if my leg doesn't heal, then nobody can pin this crime on me. Dude, your leg healed months ago, and yet you killed your own friend. Take him away, boys. And so the guy gets taken away, and then Shinichi gets, everyone in the news is like asking Shinichi questions, and they're like, you're like the modern day Sherlock Holmes. And then, this is while Shinichi's going on his way to school, and he meets up with his friend Ron. And so Ron is kind of mad at the fact that, like, yo, Shinichi, you're doing too much, my guy. Like, you're a high schooler, and you work with the detectives, you work with the cops. And she's like, dude, why don't you give my dad a shot? Like, why don't you let him solve some of these cases? And Shinichi's like, yo, maybe your dad would, make money if he actually solved the case instead of letting people get away. And then Ron punches the light pole that they're walking past, and because Ron's the captain of the karate club, and so he is like, oh, snap. Yeah, that's not gonna happen. That's crazy. You are strong as mess. And then because at this point they're still heading to school, right? And so Shinichi has a bunch of fan letters from a bunch of different girls, and so Ron specifically tells him, she's like, look, I'm all for you solving cases and everything, but you do know you're gonna have to pick someone, and you're gonna have to let the rest of the girls down gently. And when Shinichi hears this, he's like, I have to pick someone, and he instantly knows, hey, I gotta pick Ron. And then he looks at her, she looks at him, and she's like, yo, what's wrong? And he goes, oh, nothing. And I'm like, dude, you already know who you need to pick. Throw the rest of the letters away, my boy. And so they end up, Ron is like, yo, you remember the promise you made, right? And he is like, yo, what promise? I didn't make any promise. And then she starts trying to beat the crap out of Shinichi. She said, that like, yo, you were gonna take if I won my karate tournament, then you were gonna take me to Tropical Land, which I'm guessing in this world is like Disneyland, I'm guessing. But yeah, she's like, you promised that you were going to take me to Tropical Land. And he's like, all right, fine, I'll take you to Tropical Land. Jeez. And then they end up going to Tropical Land and everything. And so they end up having a good time. We also get to meet Kogoro Mori. In the manga, his name is Richard Moore. But we get to meet Kogoro Mori, who is Ron's dad. And so he runs a detective agency. But Shinichi and Ron they're having a good time. Then they're like, yo, let's go on this murder roller coaster or whatever. So they go to the roller coaster, and so they're, in line and everything. Shinichi sees these group of friends, and one of them has like a pearl necklace on, and like he ends up, so he's looking at her, and he's like, he grabs her hand, and he goes, oh snap, you're a gymnast. And Ron's like, yo, how do you know that she's a gymnast? And he's like, oh, well, by like all the calluses on her hands, she uses the uneven bars and everything. And I'm like, yo, Shinichi, this kind of cool. And then he's like, also, I saw like the lines under her skirt. And I'm like, okay, Shinichi, calm it down. And then you got these other two do like this. This other couple that's behind Shinichi and Ron, just like, have like, they're just doing whatever. Then you got two people in the back behind them, and then they're just wearing all black. And so they go onto the roller coaster and everything, and Shinichi is talking about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote Sherlock Holmes, and he's talking about all this stuff about Holmes and how Holmes deduces all of his crimes and everything. And Ron just calls him a deduction freak, And so she's like, yo, why can't you just, like, why can't you just stop talking about Holmes for like 1 second and just let me explain to you how I feel about you? And then it takes Shinichi back, and he's like, yo, oh, snap, I didn't, okay, I'm sorry. And then Ron just busts out laughing, and she's like, dude, you're so gullible. If I don't think Holmes will have fallen for that, but you did. Some detective you are. And I'm like, yo, Ron, like, you can't be pulling that. And then the roller coaster starts up, right? And so they're going, and everything is fun. And then they go into this dark tunnel, and then something wet hits Shinichi. And so Shinichi's like, yo, what the heck is this? And so it's like a teardrop. And so he takes a teardrop, and he tastes it, and he goes, salt. And he's like, yo, what the heck? It's salty. And then come to find out that and you hear something like tear, and then like the person behind them just got his head just torn off. And then the guys behind that one, the one that are in all black, are like, yo, what the heck just happened, bruh? And so they finish the ride, and even the people that are in control of the roller coaster are freaking out. And so like they're like, yo, call the police, call the coroner, we need help. And so, Inspector Megare comes in, and so he comes in with his crew and everything. And so he has, it's Megare, and then we had Takagi. And so they are asking Kudo, Shinichi, they're asking him about, hey, so what happened on this ride? And then they map out who was on the ride and everything. And so the two men in black are trying to leave, and Shinichi's like, hold up, you two can't leave. This is an interrogate. Like, this is now a crime scene. You two can't leave. We need everyone here. And one of the guys who has long blonde hair looks at him and says, and what are you gonna do if we leave, boy? And then he's like, Shinichi starts kind of like freezing up, because he's like, yo, this man looks like he has some killing intent, and I don't want to die. And then Inspector Megare comes over. He's like, yo, look, once we figure out what happened, then y'all can leave. And so Megare is, mapping everything out. And so he asks Shinichi, like, hey, what happened? And, Shinichi is describing everything that happened. And then he ends up using a rope. I don't know how he got the rope, but he ends up using a rope and a hook, as if, like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Grappling hook. But so he uses Megare as the victim, and then, he gets all the other cops in the cart and everything. And so the thing Shinichi does is, he's like, as he's explaining, he puts a bag behind him, and puts the handlebar down. So now there's a gap way so that he slides underneath. And then he's like, yo, all I have to do is sit up on the handlebar, make sure my feet are wrapped around it securely, then reach over the other tube where him and Ron were, and then tie the rope around, around the victim, and toss the hook off as it grabs on, because of the speed of the roller coaster, remember. So as he throws the hook off with the rope, as it snags onto the rest of the roller coaster, one of the beams, and with enough force, the head of the victim goes flying off. And it's like, yo! And then, one of the detectives ends up one of the cops, Takagi, ends up looking through one of the friend's bags, and he finds this huge knife covered in blood. And they're like, yo, it was you! You're the one that took this man out. And Shinichi's like, no, it's not her, because there's no way that she would have enough time to use a butcher knife to take out the victim and still have enough time to get back to her seat while the roller coaster was still in motion. And so everyone thinks it's the chick with the butcher knife, and then he looks over and he points to this other chick, and he is like, nah fam, the real culprit was you, it's the gymnast. And everyone's like, yo, what? And one of her friends is like, yo, what do you mean it's her? And he goes, well, simple. One, what happened to the necklace she was wearing? And then the necklace that the pearl necklace that she had on was gone. And it's like, yo, what? And then come to find out that the guy that she had taken out was actually her boyfriend, was her ex-boyfriend before, like, so when those two started dating, it was before they met their other friends. And then he cheated on her with the guy with the chick that he was with during the, start of it. So she felt bad and everything. And the trick that she used was basically she used piano wire, I guess, to wrap into the pearls, and then basically just had a hook just in her bag. And then when it came time, she just took the hook, attached it to the piano wire, snagged that, threw that over the guy, and then bada bing, bada boom, his head goes off, and then, yeah. And so then, after that whole situation, the Men in Black leave, and then everyone else is like, "Oh my gosh, it's Shinichi Kudo! It's the great detective! Oh my gosh, what is he doing here? He just solved a murder! Woohoo!" And then they end up leaving, and Ron ends up crying because she's like, "That's just so sad. Like I don't think I can deal with that." And then Shinichi's like, I'm okay with it. You seen one, you seen them all. And it's like, whoa, Shinichi, whoa. And then he's like, I'm used to it because I've seen a lot of bodies. And, you kind of get numb to it after a while. And Ron is like, yo, dude, how can you say that? It's still a human life. And he's like, yo, calm it down. You're gonna be okay. And then he sees a guy run off in the distance wearing a black suit. And then Shinichi's like, yo, what the heck is going on here? And so he looks at Ron. He says, yo, Ron, go home. I will catch up with you later. And then Ron goes to reach out and she says, Shinichi, wait. And then she's like, wait a minute. Why do I have the feeling I'm never going to see him again? And then Shinichi runs off, and then he's standing behind this attraction, and, so there's a deal going down between this dude that's in black and this other guy, and they're making a shady deal going on because he's like, yo, I got the money, I got the stuff you need, just make sure you delete whatever you need to delete, give me the money, and make sure my name is no longer part of whatever is going on. And Man in Black is like, all right, fam, I got you. And while this is going on, Shinichi's over here with the camera taking pictures. And I'm like, what the heck is happening? And then it turns out Shinichi doesn't realize the other guy that was, in black comes up behind him with the baseball bat, cracks him in the back of the head, and then Shinichi falls down, and then the other guy's like, oh, I'm sorry, boss. He was like, dude, you got caught by the teenage detective. If it wasn't for me, you would have been sold out and would have went to jail by now. And he is like, yo, what are we gonna do? He is like, oh, I got an idea. We can't kill him. We can't, because if we kill him, everyone's gonna be like, yo, the great detective is gone. What happened? He's like, so instead, we're gonna use the drug that our organization created that's supposedly supposed to kill him. But it hasn't been tested on humans, so he's gonna be our first experiment. So they make Shinichi drink so he's knocked out. they make him eat, take the pill, and they make him drink some water, and then they leave him there because they don't, it's like what normal villains don't do. They don't check the body to make sure, hey, we actually killed him, we actually took him out, fam. But no, they're like, oh well, our job's done, let's go back home. And so they leave. Shinichi's body is burning from the inside, and then he said he feels like his bones are breaking and remelding together. And then then he gets knocked out again because of the pain. And then when he wakes back up, he is now a kid. And so when he wakes back up, he's a kid, and the security guards are like, yo, we found a kid over here. We need to take him so we can find his parents and everything. And so they look at Shinichi, and they're like, yo, little boy, are you okay? And Shinichi's like, yo, what are they talking about? I'm a high schooler. I'm no little kid. And then they're like, yo, little boy, are you okay? And he's like, little boy. And then he's like, uh-oh, something isn't right. And so they take him back to the station where they are, so then they can try and find his parents and everything. And Shinichi ends up looking at himself in a mirror, and he's like, is that me? And then he's like, I shrunk, I'm a kid now, what the heck? And so he looks at the cops, and he tries to explain to them, yo, I'm Shinichi Kudo. I got turned into a kid. They made me take some weird drug, and now I am a kid. And all the cops are like, yeah, sure, buddy, you've been watching too many cop cartoons. Like, of course we believe you. And then Shinichi tells them to look in another direction, and then he dips. And so he runs all the way back home because he's still frantic, and then he can't even get into his own house because of how short he is. And so while he's trying to figure out how to get back into his own house, an explosion happens which knocks a guy through his wall, and it's Dr. Agasa, who is a scientist and just so happens to live next to Shinichi. And so when Dr. Agasa shows up, Shinichi's like, yo, Dr. Agasa, it's you. And then he's like, what are you? He's like, oh, you're just, you're one of Shinichi's relatives, aren't you? And Shinichi is like, no, I'm Shinichi. And then he's like, oh, that's very funny. And he looks at Shinichi's house, and he rings the doorbell. He's like, yo, Shinichi, come on out here. You got a relative of yours just waiting out here in the rain. And Shinichi's like, dude, it's me. And then and Dr. Agasa's like, no, it's not. You know what? I have the right mind to call the cops on you right now because you keep saying you're Shinichi and you're not. And then he ends up explaining to Agasa that hey, yo, one, you ran to Colombo, which is your favorite restaurant. And then he's like, you like their food so much that now you have sauce still in your mustache. And then he's like, yo, also, on your way back from Colombo, you took another exit and you ran through a construction site, which is why you have mud on your shoes and on your pants. And then Agasa looks at Shinichi and he goes, how the heck? And then Shinichi goes even further and explains that Agasa has a mole somewhere on his body. And at that point, Agasa's like, dude, how do you know this? Why is Shinichi telling my business? And then Shinichi's like, it's elementary, my dear Agasa. And then he's like, oh, you actually are Shinichi. Got it. Then what the heck happened to you? And then Shinichi's like, yo, can we talk in your house, not outside? And so they go into his house, and he's like, yo, they turned me into a kid. I don't know how. They made me drink some weird drug, and now I shrunk. And then, they go back into Shinichi's place because, Agasa is able to get into into Shinichi's house. And Shinichi ends up finding the clothes that he wore as a kid. And he's like, dang, now my clothes still fit me from when I was a kid. And so, he puts on, his little blazer and everything. And so, they're in the study where his dad keeps all of his books because his dad's a writer. And so it gets to a point where Ron shows up, and Ron's like, yo, Shinichi, are you here? And then, she walks into the library, like, study area, and she's like, oh, Dr. Agasa, you're here. And then she starts talking to him, and then Shinichi finds his dad's glasses, puts his dad's glasses on. He's like, oh, snap, that's a powerful prescription. Knocks out the lenses, puts the glasses back on, and he's like, yo, that works a lot better, because the thing that Dr. Agasa had told him was, A, you need to come up with a new name, like, right now. You can't tell anyone that you have shrunk and you have become a kid, because if the people who turned you into a kid find out that you are Shinichi Kudo, they are going to come and finish you off. Not only that, but they're going to finish you off. They're going to take out Ron. They're going to take out anyone else that you are associated with. That's including me. And then he's like, snap, I can't tell anyone. He's like, not even Ron. And he's like, snap. Dang, okay. And so when Dr. Agasa ends up talking to Ron while they're in the study, and Shinichi ends up, like, hitting his head against his dad's desk because of the prescription, Ron hears this, and Ron's like, yo, who else is in here? And when she sees Shinichi, but with the glasses on, she goes, oh, snap, there's this kid here. Who is he? And then Agasa makes up the lie that, oh, that's one of my relatives. He's, just spending the summer with me or whatever. And I'm supposed to be looking after him. And then she's like, yo, little kid, what's your name? And he was about to say, oh, I'm Shinichi, and he couldn't. So he backs up to the bookshelf, instantly looks at like 2 books, and he calls himself Conan Edogawa. And so that's how we get Conan Edogawa. So now we have Conan. And so Agasa is like, yo, Ron, can you do me a favor? Can you take Conan? Because Agasa is so used to calling Shinichi, he almost slips up and calls Conan Shinichi. So he's like, yo, can you take Conan with you for a little? Like, can you and your dad look after Conan? I can't take him with me since, I'm a bachelor. And yeah, just make sure he's good, and since you and your dad, run an agency, I think Conan would be helpful with you two. And then Ron's like, okay, I guess I gotta explain this to Dad when we get home. And so they're walking off, and like they're almost to Kogoro Mori's place, the agency, Mori Detective Agency. And so while they're almost there, that's when Ron ends up asking Conan, she's like, hey, do you have anyone that you're interested? Like, do you have anyone that you like? Because you look like you're in first grade and everything. And he's like, no, not really. And then he's like, but what about you? Do you have anyone that you like? And then she's like, yeah, actually I do. He's a deduction nerd. He really likes Sherlock Holmes. And then at this point, this is when Conan's like, oh, it's that Shinichi guy you were calling for, wasn't it? And then she's like, yeah, it's him. I really like him. And then it's like, when Conan says this, and then when he hears her response, he gets red, because you remember, he's Shinichi, so he's like, oh, snap. I actually know how she feels about me, and I'm a little kid. Well, stuck in this little kid body. Dang. And, so they go talk to Kogoro, and Kogoro Mori comes running out of his office screaming, I got one! I did it! I finally did it! I got one! And then he's like, Ron is like, yo, Dad, what is happening? What, you got what? He's like, haha. He's like, since the detective boy is gone, I finally got a case. The great detective Maury is on the case. We gotta go solve a kidnapping. And so he jumps into a taxi, and then Ron and Conan jump in after him. And so all three of them are heading out to go solve this kidnapping case. And turns out that, when they get there, like, the dad is in disbelief, and the dad's in disbelief. The butler is a little bit freaked out. The maids are like, they're answering questions from Megare and Maury, and gets to a point where even Conan is now asking questions because he can't help it because he is Shinichi. And he starts asking questions, in which Kogoro picks up Conan and hands him to Ron and says, yo, Ron, look after the kid. I don't know what he thinks he's doing, but it's no place for a kid. And so she grabs Conan, and then they walk away, and then Conan is like, yo, what is going on here? And then the dad is like, yeah, the robber wants 1,000 yen or 1 million yen or something to that nature. And when he hears the alibi for the butler, and he's like, and the butler's like, yeah, but he jumps over the wall, he climbed down the tree and everything, and then he took her, and then he just left. And then Conan's like, yo, that doesn't seem right though. And then Conan gets startled because the dogs jump out and start barking at him. And then because he starts playing with a bouncy ball as a soccer ball. And then Ron is like, Shinichi would do that a lot too when he was a kid. And then it would get to a point where Conan, in this case, would start giving Kogoro hints as to what's going on. And he's like, yo, the dogs, these dogs are very nice, but do they bark at everyone? And the dad's like, yeah, they bark at everyone, even intruders. And then Kogoro's like, wait a minute, the butler just said that nobody heard a thing. And then you see the butler start sweating. And so the butler is like, oh snap, this ain't going my way, fam. I gotta get out of here. And so the butler starts trying to leave, and Kogoro's like, where you think you going, fam? We ain't done here. And then turns out that the dad ends up getting another phone call from the kidnapper. And so the dad answers the phone, and so it turns out that because Kogoro at first was like, yo, it was the butler, he was the one who did it, which he isn't wrong, because at first it was the butler, and then it turned into an actual kidnapping because the butler was like, yo, we're gonna just take her to a hotel and then we'll bring her back in the morning. And then turns out he took her to the hotel. Then when he left, another person came in, took her, and then took her somewhere else. And so now it's an actual kidnapping. And so now Conan is like, something's not right here. This case isn't actually solved. So he takes one of the dogs, and then, because when he the dad gets a phone call, and the dad's like, yo, who is this? And he was like, the guy on the phone's like, who do you think? This is the guy who kidnapped your daughter. And then the guy's like, no, you can, stop playing around. We already figured out that it wasn't actually you. And then he hears his daughter scream, and when he hears her scream, and then he is like, oh no, this is bad. And then she's like, Dad, this is where I am. I'm in a storage warehouse for a school, and I can see a smokestack building that's a couple buildings away. And then Conan's like, got it. And so the daughter's name is Akiko. And so the dad's like, he screams for Akiko because the kidnapper is like, yo, if you ever want to see your daughter, you're gonna give me the, send me the money, and don't get the cops involved. And so he doesn't realize that, the cops are already here. And so Mori is like, keep him talking. And then the kidnapper, hears Mori. He goes, yo, who was that? And the guy's like, no one. It was one of my servants. And then the guy hangs up the phone. Conan is already off. He is trying to pin down the location of how many smokestack buildings that can be seen from a school. And so he narrows it down to like 5 different locations. So it's him and a dog. And so they're going, and it gets to a point where he's been almost to all of them. And then he's like, wait a minute. And then he goes to one school, and then he sees it from the side angle. And he's like, it's an actual building, not a smokestack, because it's probably the way where Akiko is being kept, that she is only able to see it from the side view, not the full view. And so Conan is like, yo, let me go and figure out where you can only see it from its side view. And then he figures it out. He gets to the school, and then he goes into like the storage room area of the gym, the gym area. And then he ends up seeing Akiko, and so he ends up like, untying her and saving her. And she's like, yo, who the heck are you? And he goes, I'm Conan Edogawa, a detective. And she's like, a detective? And so the kidnapper actually sees Conan, and he's like, hey, yo, what the heck you doing here? And so Conan goes in to try and fight the dude, and he's like, dang it, my arms are short, my legs are short, I don't have the reach that I used to. And then the guy just starts wailing on Conan, throws him into a bunch of soccer balls. And so Conan literally is like, you know what, fine. And so he kicks one of the soccer balls, and the guy catches it, and he's like, you got a powerful kick, my guy, but that ain't gonna do nothing to me. And then he goes to charge at Conan to wail on him again, and then Ron comes in and just starts wailing on him, and then they end up saving Akiko, and so we get a good resolution to that mystery. So Akiko gets saved, and Kogoro thinks he's the one who did it. And then we get the last thing that Akiko says is, thanks, Mr. Detective, you were really great out there. And so Ron hears this, and she looks at Conan, and she's like, detective? And Conan's like, nah, she didn't mean me, she must have been talking about your pops. And so we get a good wrap up for that. Then we get into the actor murder case. She's a pop idol. I continue to say actress, so do forgive me. Where we have the pop actress named Yoko, and she goes and asks Kogoro for help. And so it's her and her manager. So they go and ask Kogoro for help, and gets to a point where they think that somebody is out to get Yoko. And so they go back to Yoko's apartment, to where she lives. She lives in this apartment building, and they go to her place. So it's Ron, it's Conan, and it's Kogoro and Yoko's manager. And so they're like, yo, do not tell this to anyone. It's not supposed to be known to the public where Yoko is staying. And it turns out that when they walk in, they see that there's a guy already killed, already on the ground, dead. And everyone's like, yo, what the heck happened here? And then there's this other chick who was a rival of Yoko, and when she comes in, her name is Yuko. But so when Yuko comes in, she instantly, because Inspector Mega Ray gets called, obviously, because you got to call the cops. So Mega Ray gets called in with his forensics team and everyone else. And so, when he gets called in, so everyone's trying to figure out what the heck happened. And there's a moment where Yuko ends up just walking to the bathroom without saying anything to anyone. And then Conan asks Yoko later on, he's like, yo, where's your bathroom? And she's like, oh, it's down here. It's to the hallway, down the hallway into the first door on the left. And so that gives Kogoro, like, he gets an idea. He's like, wait a minute. How is it that he was like, Conan had to ask where the bathroom was because we've never been here before. And then he looks at Yuko and he goes, how is it that you know where her exact bathroom was? And nobody had to tell you anything. And then Kogoro's like, it was her. I'm telling you, it was the rival. She must have been the one to try and take out this dude. And it turned out that the victim, the guy that's on the ground, his name is Akiyoshi Fuji. And so, like, everyone's trying to figure out what's his deal. And then come to find out that Akiyoshi is, or was, apparently, he was Yoko's boyfriend. And then the manager, like, because the manager, Yoko, and Akiyoshi all went to high school together, apparently. And so, when the manager had seen that Akiyoshi and Yoko were dating, he was like, yo, I'm gonna need you to break things off with her. And then Akiyoshi broke things off. He didn't want to, but he did anyway. And come to find out that when he was at Yoko's apartment, he was trying to, like, still, be with her, but it turns out that it wasn't Yoko he was talking to. He was actually talking to Yuko, but from behind, Yoko and Yuko look exactly the same because they have the same exact type of hair. And so it's a point where it was actually the dude took his own life by mistake, and because the guy had the blade of a knife sitting in a block of ice, and then when the block of ice melted, he was standing somewhere and accidentally fell backwards, and then, but it was very sad because they retrieve a letter, and it details the fact of, like, he never wanted to break up with her. He was gonna, like, if they were still together, that, like, he would have, saw her, continue to, go up higher and higher to stardom and everything with all the shows that she was doing. And it was just that was just one sad case. But that's where Volume 1 actually ends. So, yeah. But I kind of liked it because, like, one, even though this is getting me into Detective Conan, it's like, hey, we're going to present to you the mystery. It is your job to try and solve it before Conan just says, hey, here's everything that happened. So let me know if you want me to continue talking about Detective Conan volume by volume, and I will do that. If you've read Detective Conan or watched Detective Conan, do let me know in the comment section down below, and I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed your visit to the Underground Geek Shack. See you guys.